welcome to our second episode of 10 Minutes with Anthony. I'm your host, Jane Cherney, and here we have the Anthony. So what's up? What's new?
How's it going, man? First, before we get started, though, I do want to put out this disclaimer because you and I are very opinionated, especially me. And, you know, we are here in Bodyzone, which is our permanent home for 10 Minutes with Anthony in the Bodyzone. But just because we have an opinion doesn't necessarily mean that those are the same opinions of Bodyzone, its owners, its staff. I think that's usually what they would say with the disclaimer. So, in other words, if I say something that upsets you or you don't agree with it, let me know. Or better yet, let Jan know. Tell Jan you're upset with it. Don't call the gym and tell them, hey, you got those guys doing that kind of thing. They're gracious hosts. They let us do our show from here. We love being here, but it doesn't necessarily mean they agree with everything I tell you, especially the part about the Twizzlers will give you big biceps. They don't agree with that here. So, but yeah, that's our disclaimer before we go any further.
And remember, it's 10 minutes with Anthony, so whatever I say doesn't really matter. so Okay. So there's been some questions asked on our Facebook. So let's see how Anthony's going to deal with them.
Yeah, they're a little uncomfortable. I mean, but I do say that, you know, I always say, send me your questions, post them, send them to me, and I'll do my best to answer them. Now, this week I had kind of a social media brouhaha with some hunters. So that was kind of going to be my theme of the show, and I was going to talk about having your own style. But these questions that were posed to me are kind of personal questions, and probably going to take a little bit more time to answer. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So that'll probably be all we have time for today. But a guy by the name of Greg Larson, who is a former sports journalist in Jacksonville, Florida, and he's had a successful radio show for many years, at least since 1988, 89, so however many years that is. There was a brief time that he and I did a sports talk show together, the years 95 and 96. I haven't really talked to him in quite a few years. I've been doing my thing, and you know, he's continued to do his. He's resurfaced the last few months on social media, Facebook, and he's reconnected with me. And I'm sure he's kind of a gossiper, you know, and he loves gossip, and he's got some questions for what I've been doing all these years. So I'll do my best to answer his questions. I think his first question was, had I ever beaten anybody up? And the answer is yes, I have. And I've also been the victim of a beating 2 different times. You know, the best, there have been a few guys that I beat up, but one in particular, I used to have a rivalry with a guy in my hometown, and the rivalry came from we were, and this is, you know, young. I mean, I'm talking, I was probably like 21 at this time, so I didn't know any better. If this was me now, I would never get involved in this kind of thing. But there was a girl that I thought I was dating, kind of. Back then she worked at Hooters. And she was also dating this other guy. His name was Nick, Italian guy, hot-headed Italian guy. Well, she was dating both of us and playing both of us against each other kind of thing. Like, he's bothering me, so he was looking for me, and she would tell me that he's bothering her, so I'm looking for him. So a couple times we had like little confrontations here and there. One time he tried to hit me with a pipe. Another time he was in his car and I tried to punch him and I missed, and I like knocked his, whatever you call that, middle mirror, the rear view mirror, or whatever, I knocked it off his car. So, you know, we were kind of like really jonesing for each other, you know. And it all, one night, you know, I showed up at this girl's work to see her, and he's showing up at the same time. Now, if I had any intelligence at all back then, I would have figured this out a long time ago. But you believe these girls and when they're telling you this, and so it was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing there? And I wanted a piece of this guy real bad, so I popped him a couple times. He went down, and I kicked him, and then he got up and he ran. And so it's kind of a weird thing, but it was night, and there was like lights on where there's a lot of bugs flying around. Yeah. So he decides to come back to fight, right? So we square up, and I see what I think is a moth had landed on his eye. But it wasn't. I had actually cut his eye, and it hadn't started bleeding yet, and it had, like, the skin had flapped up like that. Oh. And so we square up and start to, do our thing, and he just starts bleeding really bad. And by this time, people have called the cops, and the police come, and they, handcuff us or whatever. Well, hands on the car. And then what I said was, hey, man, this guy attacked me in the parking lot. I'm scared to death. And this guy's hot, he was a hothead. So he's telling them, get your hands off of me, this and that. So the cops, pretty much say, quit bleeding on my car. And they believe my story. That was the end of that. And
did you win the girl?
No, she was. So I think they ended up together, but and then but it still wasn't over. The guy recruited some guys to do a number on me, and like a year later or something like that, I had went out on the first date with a woman who's actually going to be connected to another question later, a woman who I ended up marrying. And on our very first date, we went to some club. Well, lo and behold, he's there, and he's got his brother and some other thugs that are there with one reason to beat me up, right? So keep in mind, I don't really know this girl that well. We're out on our first date. And she says to me, she's like, I almost swear that guy swung, when you turned the corner, that guy swung at your head with a beer bottle. And I was like, what? And then I looked and I saw him, and then we start, and they had got the whole bouncers and stuff in on it. And I'm there with just this girl, and I'm fighting bouncers, and they're hitting me, and she's like she's a nervous wreck, and I'm, you're not going to throw me out of here and all that. And then that was the end of that was the final thing. I mean, is a brouhaha with him and the bouncers and everything. And then that was the end of it. I think he ended up in jail or something like that. I'm not sure. He did something. He was kind of like I don't want to say gangster, but he was kind of like a borderline kind of guy like that, we're kind of guy that could recruit some friends to do a number on you with beer bottles and sticks and stuff. And he always seemed to have a weapon when we squared up. But
I think Italians and the Greeks, they're the worst.
Yeah, he was Italian, and of course I'm Greek, and but that was that. So that was the question of had I ever beat somebody up. That was the best example. I got beat up a couple times. One time in particular was at a place in Jacksonville called Campus Corner, which was on the west side, and it was if anybody knows Jacksonville, knows the west side. That's kind of a rough part of town, and they used to have a new wave club over there. At that time was like kind of music like Depeche Mode, The Cure, that kind of thing. Yeah, and that's the thing about it. We had a real good buddy that used to go to this club all the time, and we used to give him a ration about it. You're like, you like that music, that crap, that that stuff. We all like it now, years later. But then we used to give him, and he would go there. That's right. He would go there, and we'd give him crap about it. So but there was always girls over there all the time, at that club. So we went one time, and I wasn't even old enough to get in the club. I couldn't get in the club. So I was sitting out by the car, and one of my friends, somebody smashed a bottle over his head. So they went out. Yeah, they went outside. Yeah, why do they do that? Why do they even have beer bottles for beer? You know, it's like, oh, here's a weapon for you to drink from. When you've drunk your fill, just swing that weapon, would you? So I remember he came out. He had a bloody head. I was out there. The friends came out, and it was like maybe 3 friends. I'm trying to think who the guys were that were involved in it. Well, we started fighting, and they had more guys, many more guys than us. And I know in the movies, you see a guy stand back, and he's taking one guy after another. But in a real fight, I can trust me, it doesn't happen like that. There's always that guy that tackles you. And as soon as I got tackled, I was finished. They're holding me on the ground. And and I remember like getting kicked in the face, like fully in the nose, like, somebody's boots full. And I remember thinking, man, if I don't get up, I could die down here. I was having a tough time breathing and stuff like that. And some girl came out and started screaming, "You're killing him! You're killing him!" And so they kind of held up for a second. I was able to get to my feet, and I kind of grabbed a guy that was taking a punch at me at the time. I kind of grabbed a guy by his hair and smashed his head into, I don't even know why I'm even telling you this stuff, smashed his head into a car, denting the car, and they had to call paramedics for him. It was a mess. Cops came, everything, and I ended up with a black eye, real bad black eye that did not go away, I swear, for 2 months. I had to have some kind of damage in my eye, but it was terrible. And it was a terrible thing, and I would have a heart attack if my sons or anybody I knew was doing things like that. And it just goes along with a lot of things I did back in the day that I wish I wouldn't have done, but that's been a long time, I guess, and so that was the beating up and getting beat up.
Yeah, I think I witnessed, Tony, you almost killing 2 people. Almost beating up the 2 people.
Chicken, right?
One big, both of them over chicken.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. We were shooting a movie early in the morning, and one of your actor friends was just, it's like, look, it's early, dude, man, just do your part and let's go, and there was homeless guys out there, and he's yelling at the homeless guys, and he was going to kick a chicken. I seem to remember he started and he was going to kick a chicken. I just said, look, man, stop. And he's like, what? And I said, dude, just stop. What are you talking about? I said, because I was afraid what I was afraid was going to happen was he was going to he was going to do something to that chicken, and I wasn't going to be able to control myself. Yeah. So I was just trying to give him a warning, and I think I told him, I said, listen, if you don't stop right now, I'm going to beat you up or something like that. I'm sure my language is probably a little bit worse. And he told Jan, that's it, I'm out of here. And he left, he walked, he quit. So Jan turns and yells at me, look what you did. Go get me an actor. I'm like, Jan, it's 5:30 in the morning. What actor do you want me to get? Yeah. So Jan's like, I'll be right back. And he goes and gets the guy back. So we have to do a scene together. It's a little uncomfortable. I've just threatened this guy. Yeah. And we had to do a scene together. And from what I remember, we messed up the scene. He was supposed to bump into me, right? Yeah. And we bumped into each other and hit heads. And it almost knocked him out, And I think he thought I did it on purpose, Yeah. I didn't do it on purpose. And so it was, but it made it in the movie, and it was a good part of the movie. It was a good part of the movie. So that was so that was a little, I get weird when it comes to animals, man. Ever since I was a kid, I don't know what that is, but, I try to be a little different and not kind of a thug. I'm getting a little too old to be a thug, but those are your beat up stories. I think he wanted to know something about my sons, who, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but I have identical twin boys, Adonis Christopher Iliopoulos and Hercules Anthony Iliopoulos. They were born August 9th, 1995. At that time, I was doing a radio show with Greg, and the problem with them being born was they were born 3 months premature. And at that time, I think they were some of the smallest babies to ever survive. My son Adonis was 1 pound 14 ounces, and Hercules was 2.4. And they were in the hospital for 3 months, and we were doing the radio show, and a lot of people wanted to know, how they did. And I'm sure that's why Greg was curious, because he remembers that time. They were able to recover. I mean, they've had a normal life, thank God. The only repercussions from that is their eyes never really develop, so they have really bad vision. I mean, they wear thick glasses, they can't see. So that's the only thing. They can't see. I mean, if they take their glasses off, they can, like when they came down here to visit me, and I tried to take them snorkeling, and they put them, and it was one day was just phenomenal at the White Street. I mean, there were fish colors everywhere, and I'm like, dude, are you seeing this? And they couldn't see it, man.
I think they make masks, with the glasses in them already, probably for this sort of.
So it was like a perfect day, and I was like, dude, I can't. I mean, there's barracuda, there was and I'm like, and just colors everywhere, and they couldn't see it. So I was like, man. So,
when I see them on the pictures, I never see them with the glasses.
I think they've come up with, they wear some kind of they've been wearing contacts. They've come up with the contact. But if they're ever wearing their glasses, I mean, they're like Coke bottles, man, like Buddy Holly. But that was the only thing. They used to have a little problem pronouncing their R's in some of their speech. But other than that, man, they wrestled in school. They graduated. They lift weights. They used to train with me. They never aspired to compete in bodybuilding, but they liked having a decent physique. And all in all, they ended up pretty good dudes. So that was, and back then I remember I was just thinking, man, I just want them to survive. I don't care what's wrong with them. But, they exceeded all my expectations. So much so that I don't want to say I forgot about it, but it wasn't on my mind, them being premature so that was the deal with that. And I guess the final question was about me hitting rock bottom, right? Most uncomfortable one. Well, I guess it's not uncomfortable. I mean, essentially, here's the deal. I was married, and I had 3 children. My daughter, actually, very proud of my daughter. She's actually a nurse now. And she went to nursing school, graduated from nursing school, and she works as a nurse in Orlando. And she's married, has a child, which means I have a grandchild, which I don't see anywhere near as much as I should, and that's something that in my life is pretty much lacking, that I don't see my grandson. Anyway, I was married, and for 16 years with some change. I had my background along with bodybuilding is I actually had worked in IT and ended up getting an engineering degree. So I worked for companies like Lockheed Martin and Tupperware as what they call Unix systems engineer.
As a model?
No, I did, and what was happening with me on a personal note was I certainly enjoyed, I was a dual role. I was a bodybuilder, competing in bodybuilding, trying to do whatever bodybuilding stuff, whatever comes with that modeling stuff. And then I had this office job, where I wore khakis and carried my laptop and had a corporate card and all that stuff. Well, the more I got the bodybuilding stuff, the more I hated the corporate stuff. And it got to a point where you almost become a slave because you make really good money and you think, well, I went to school for this. If it would be insane for me to quit, because what could I do that would pay me this much money? This is what I trained, this is what I went to, but I hated it, man. I absolutely despised it. I would fall asleep at my desk. I would be writing diets down and not doing anything I was supposed to do. I would, and at the time, especially when I worked at Tupperware, which Tupperware is almost in Kissimmee in Orlando, and it was almost, from where I lived, it was like a 30-mile drive. And it would, with tolls, I don't know, back then it was like $6 in tolls one way. It was crazy. And I used to think, man, this is crazy, man. I drive an hour in a car and pay all this money in tolls to sit somewhere I absolutely hate. And I'd go to lunch with these guys, right? And nothing against them, but I mean, they live for this stuff. You know, they would be talking work stuff.
Yeah.
And I would think, oh, man, I've made a big mistake, man. I'm in a place that, you know, what am I going to do? You know, these guys live, eat, and breathe this stuff. You know, they're, you know, and I remember at that time, there was a time that there was a pic at the time. Tony Romo was a new quarterback of the Cowboys, and they had a picture of him we were in a restaurant somewhere, and I told these guys, I said, if any one of you can tell me who this guy is, you know, because it's, you know, you're on your lunch break. I want to talk about football. I want to talk about females. I don't know anything but, you know, what's the best fiber optic cable to run to Europe, you know? I mean, this is what these guys live for, this stuff, you know? And I'm sitting here, you know, I'm jacked up. I'm thinking about contests I'm going to do. And so I said, listen, man, anybody here can tell me who this dude is in this picture, I'll buy everybody here lunch. And nobody could tell me, you know? They're like, they used to love Super Bowl Sunday, because they'd go to like real sought after restaurants in Orlando, like Emeril's, places like that were hard to get into. You know, they had real nice restaurants in Orlando. And Super Bowl Sunday, they would love it because everybody's watching the game. So that's when they would take their wife to, you know, eat at these places. But it was terrible. So, you know, that was kind of putting the hex on my mind. And my wife at the time was making real good money in real estate, and I was investing in real estate. And we ended up buying a home in Winter Park that was 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom, had a pool, jacuzzi, had a bathroom outside, paid over $500,000 for it, man. So, I mean, I thought, well, this is the way things are supposed to be. And all the time I'm miserable. And, you know, I ended up leaving that job. Just, you know, they were going to fire me. I mean, I kind of resigned. They were going to fire me because I was just terrible, you know. And I was starting to train people, and, you know, I was starting to get pretty decent in bodybuilding. And I thought, hey, man, I can make a living in bodybuilding. But problem is, you know, I'm not living in an apartment somewhere. I'm living in a 3,500 square foot home in Winter Park that the mortgage payment was like $3,500 a month, you know. And so at that time too, I remember doing an appraisal for the house, and we had bought the house for $521,000. I just remember that number. And doing an appraisal the next year, and the house was worth like $675. And I remember thinking, man, that's how the rich people do it. Then, you know, they buy that. You know, they buy that. And I had bought a house before where I made maybe $150,000 on. You know, the house before that, and then the house I had before. So this was the third home I had, and I was, you know, I don't know, 36. You know, and so. You know, and nobody could talk to me about anything. You know, my head was here, you know. I mean, I had this physique, you know, money, you know. Yeah. I thought I was a decent looking guy, you know. There's no way, you know, anything could ever happen. And, well, anyway, about that time, so that appraisal, then the next year, you know, that's when the real estate crashed. So money I had in real estate, all of a sudden, and I remember trying to get some money to see about the house, you know, like refinancing the house, you know, and they're like, your house is worth like $450,000. Yeah. And it had gone, you know, it dropped like that. And so also a big part of our money, because my wife was in real estate, she wasn't making anything, you know. Yeah. So, and now I'm trying to, you know, I'm training people in a gym, and I'm doing some modeling work here. I'm selling a thing of protein here and there, you know, and, you know, sometimes as a man, you feel a little inadequate and you feel a little weak, you know, and, you know, you kind of, I don't want to say, but you're almost kind of looking for your mommy, you know. And sometimes when women sense this, you know, women have this sense, and they sense that weakness, and you start to not be as attractive to them anymore. You seem like a weak man. And, you know, maybe that was kind of happening there. And so anyway, we ended up splitting. And I didn't handle the separation very well. I left went to Jacksonville, rented a little 1-bedroom crappy apartment in a real rough place of town. It was just me and my dogs. Those same dogs always been with me, and my motorcycle. That's it. And it was horrible, and I sat in my apartment and cried and beat my head against the door every single day. And she moved on. She moved on in enough to where she was like, hey, kind of come back. You can have the house. You can have the kids. I don't want to say that. You can have the house, take care of the kids, kind of thing. I'm going to go. So I took it, man, and I went back to Orlando. I tried to make, try to do something with the house. Try to take care of my kids. I took a minimum wage job collecting for a company that was collecting money for Bright House Cable at the time. And I didn't even know. They were like, are you okay with minimum wage? I had no idea what minimum wage was. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I just need a job, And so I did. There was a time a few years earlier where we had made over $300,000. And now I was making $7.25 an hour or whatever it was, knocking on people's doors saying, hey, man, your cable bill is... So all this...
Welcome to the real world,
yeah,
man.
And I remember, like, talking to guys there, and guys were like, yeah, man, I'll have to put gas in my truck at the end of the week. And I'm like, what's talking gas? And I had no idea how bad the economy was and everything. I'm like, gas. But, here I am. I'm one of these dudes now, And it was very humbling, because I had, I was in, these guys are using Thule truck racks for their ladder, right? And I had been the Thule spokesperson. Where I took they used me in their catalog and everything else. And I was like, I wonder if these guys would even believe if I told them I was the putting their ladder on this thing. So it was very humbling for me. That was rock bottom. I mean, I ended up going back to my engineering skills and writing that company a few programs that helped them do business, kind of looking at how they were doing business and kind of engineering it for them a little bit. So they paid me. They paid me good enough where I could kind of get on my feet again. I was able to take care of my kids, get them through school. But I was having to, I was using all my money, man, all my retirement and everything, paying a lawyer, trying to do some, negotiating my way out of that house and everything. I ended up losing all my retirement, all my money, everything, man. And so at, whatever I was, 45 or whatever, I had nothing. And, the job and, yeah, I mean, my life was fine though. I mean, I was kind of, got peace with it. I mean, I was, having a okay time, I guess. And yeah, man, I mean, that was it. And then just kind of slowly but surely put my life back together. I actually met the woman that I'm with now, my woman who I, been with for 6 years, Madeline, and wonderful woman. And she really kind of helped put me back together again, She, and then I had an opportunity to this company, even though they were paying me pretty good, I had to make a decision to leave this company and take a pay cut, a big pay cut. Well, not a big pay cut. I wasn't making any money, but a cut, to go to work for FedEx. Kind of start at the bottom, but they had benefits and there was a future there. I had to start it part-time. And, I hemmed and hawed, and because of this woman, I was able to take that position. And it was a struggle, man. It was a struggle. She had to take care of a lot of stuff for me, man, because I was fighting for hours and everything. And then after, time, kind of worked my way up, transferred down here. She came down here. She started working for FedEx herself, kind of reinvented, she helped reinvent me, we're back. I own property again. I have a retirement again, there's retire from FedEx. I'll have a pension, but I also have a 401k. Life is really good. I enjoy what I do. I love being here. I love this. I love Key West. I love the Florida Keys. I have good friends like you, Jan. Sad story, I guess. I mean, but the important thing is, the sun will shine. I mean, I used to sit in that room, and I don't want to say I contemplated suicide. I would never say that. But I wasn't real happy with my life when I sat in the little bedroom apartment. And if somebody would have just been able to tell me, hey man, the sun's going to come out again. Everything's going to be fine. Just weather the storm. It would have made things happen. But I'm glad I did. I'm getting a divorce will always be a failure in my life, and it's because, I think it hurt the children, especially my daughter. So that's something, will always kind of take a piece out of me. I'm certainly happy with the person I ended up with, and I have nothing but love and best wishes for the person that's the mother of my children that I divorced. We have no animosity whatsoever. I mean, she sends me pictures of the grandkid all the time, keeps me updated what's going on. When I went to Orlando, not recently, but I had dinner at her house with her and her boyfriend at the time. Watched the fights over there with my sons, So, I know and if she ever would come down here, she could, stay at my place. I have no problem with that. Anything, I have no problem with her. I'm sorry things worked out the way they did. A lot of that was my fault. It wasn't, it's two sides to every street. It wasn't, I'm not bitter. I don't have any animosity. I got through it, and here I am. I'm still lifting weights, still keeping a decent physique, and I'm going to be, I'll be in Pittsburgh, in the Masters Nationals. Here I come. Injuries, losing all my money, everything else. I'm still, still beating. I think I answered all the questions, right?
So just remember that the sun will always come up tomorrow. So will we next week.
Trust me, all things pass. Even good, remember, good things pass as well. But just everything good and bad passes. You'll get through this, man. Don't give up.